Robot Talk is the podcast that sits down with robot enthusiasts from around the world and asks them the questions you always wanted answered. Like, can I shake hands with the robot? And how does that thing work? Hello everyone, welcome to Robot Talk. I'm your host, Claire Asher, and this week's episode is about how soft robotics can make hands and grippers that are safer and more versatile. But first, I'd like to remind you to rate this episode and leave a review if that's something you can do on the platform you're listening on. And don't forget to share the podcast on social media or tell your friends about it. It really helps the podcast reach more listeners. So, with all that said, let's get on with this week's interview. I recently had a fascinating conversation with Kaspar Althoefer from Queen Mary University of London about soft robotic manipulators for healthcare and manufacturing. Today, I'm speaking to Kaspar Althoefer, a professor of robotics engineering at Queen Mary University of London, researching soft robotics, tactile perception, and intelligent manipulation. Hi Kaspar, welcome to Robot Talk.
Yeah, hi Claire, thanks for having me.
So you're the director of the Centre for Advanced Robotics at Queen Mary University. So to get us started, can you tell me a little bit about the research that's going on in the centre?
Yeah, as you said, Centre for Advanced Robotics at Queen Mary. And we carry out fundamental research in robotics, and that is really across a very wide spectrum of different areas. And these areas include soft robotics, haptics and tactile perception, human-robot interaction, intelligent manipulation. But we are also very interested in looking into autonomy. So, for example, we have research into unmanned aerial vehicles or drones and try to create systems that can carry out tasks in a more autonomous way. But of course, I should also mention we are very strong in cognitive robotics, and that links, of course, very much with the very trendy area of artificial intelligence. So really trying to create now novel systems that are capable of learning and, for example, be capable of interacting with humans in a more intelligent manner.
So a really diverse portfolio then.
Yeah. We are also very, very proud to, be actually creating our own robots. So here we stick out from quite a number of robotic centers where maybe the focus is more on software development or making use of existing hardware. So we develop robots, we fabricate robots from scratch, and these are then applied to a wide range of applications. So we have healthcare as one of the important topics, and that includes robot-assisted minimally invasive surgery or keyhole surgery, but also rehabilitation. And other areas are to develop robots that can be used in extreme environments. So we have worked with governmental bodies and industry to develop robots that can actually go into nuclear environments and help there with the big problem of nuclear waste decommissioning. We are also interested in developing robots for the construction sector, so inspection of old buildings, for example. But also another very important area is, human-robot interaction. I mentioned it already beforehand. And here we are looking at robots that can collaborate with humans in a safe way. I think safety is a very important aspect. And if you look at manufacturing, so that is one of our application areas. We try to now create these robots that can effectively work side by side with humans in that environment.
Not trapped behind a cage.
That would be the idea, exactly, to free the robots more and more and have them more closely interacting with humans.
Yeah. Fascinating. I mean, yeah, you've covered a huge range of different topics in robotics there. Your specific focus, though, is soft robotics. And I mean, a lot of the tasks you've just mentioned and a lot of other tasks that we might want to apply robots to involve interacting with objects in the world, grasping them, gripping them, picking things up, which, you know, is a skill that as humans we don't really give much thought to because it's so easy, it's come so naturally to us, but it's actually quite a complex task and has been quite challenging in robotics. So can you talk a little bit about how soft robotics is helping with these kind of grasping and gripping tasks?
Yeah. I totally agree with the way you summarized that. I'm also fascinated by the human hand and its extraordinary capabilities. And it's this enormous dexterity that we have in our hands, and that allows us to interact with the environment in a very easy way and really capable of carrying out complex physical tasks. And what I also find very interesting is these sensors that we have integrated, tactile sensors that are really sitting in our skins. Our hands are effectively covered with them, especially if you think about the fingertips. So thousands of mechanoreceptors there. I mean, the hands allow us not only to then touch the environment, but also get this feedback interaction. I think that is very interesting and really is at the interface of what I'm doing, effectively looking at creating soft robotic hands and at the same time try to integrate tactile perception with them. So talking more about soft robotics, an area that I'm involved with for 15 years or so, here I look in particular at soft materials robots. So robotic hands made from soft materials like silicon rubber, and they are pneumatically actuated. And you can fabricate them very easily. So a standard 3D printer would allow you to create a mold. You can then pour the silicon in there and you can create a robotic device effectively. So that is also something I like about it. So it's kind of a very open research area, and everyone who is interested can join in and develop their own systems very easily.
Yeah.
And effectively what we do is we create these structures that have air chambers integrated, and these air chambers get then inflated by air, and by doing so, the air chamber expands and moves the silicon structure in different directions. And that's the way we effectively create movement. We achieve bending of these structures. And that is really the concept there. And what is very, very nice about then these structures that one can create is that they are highly dexterous and they show a very natural movement. So if we compare that to the standard robotic hands made from rigid components, very unnatural, very clunky and clumsy if you want. But now with soft materials, you have very smooth, very flowy movements. So very human or biology-like movements that can be achieved there. So I find that also very interesting. But this has also, great advantages, because now these hands, because they are soft and compliant, they can adapt to the environment very easily. So if we want to carry out tasks such as picking up things or bringing things from one place to another, which is an important area, then this can be very nicely achieved with those hands, very much in contrast to the standard rigid component approach. Maybe I can give an example there. So we are now collaborating with Ocado, and there we are interested now in creating soft robotic hands that can effectively be capable of interacting with a wide range of objects. So Ocado has 55,000 different objects, and many of them are very organized. They are boxes, so not much of a problem. But lots of it is fruit and vegetables. Lots of it very fragile. So here soft robotics can really make a difference to actually And the simple task, picking up and placing. Today, Ocado needs human operators, human workers to carry out these tasks. So lots of potential there. And obviously other areas include healthcare. So we have been working on prosthetics, for example, and also in the area of minimally invasive surgery, where these soft robotic hands, soft robotic arms can be really applied in a very useful way.
Yeah. So when I think about like an inflatable robot, my first frame of reference is thinking about a balloon. And obviously, like when a balloon is uninflated, it's kind of saggy and loose, and then it becomes rigid.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how you can achieve precision with that kind of those two kind of extremes?
Yep, these are very good questions. And I would also say that soft robotics is not the solution to all problems. And you're making a very good point about precision and accuracy. How can we achieve this particular aspect, which can be so easily achieved in a robot that is made from rigid components? So we think about the manufacturing environment. There are these standard traditional robots that make cars, and they do that, without fail, day in, day out, and to the millimeter, to the sub-millimeter accuracy, as it's required if you want to, for example, put together a car. So here, soft robotics, including inflatable robotics, have their challenges. Let's put it like this. Yeah.
Sure.
But you see, I take that point definitely, but I would like to repeat. Yes, I mean, manufacturing sector, especially where we have robots in cages and they are, having a particular task, they're doing a very good job, and that is likely to continue like this. But there are many areas where maybe this very high accuracy is not required. So, for example, if we look at robots that are supposed to interact with humans, whether we are now exactly putting the robotic hands into the right position to help a person up, or whether it's a centimeter off, it doesn't matter, as long as the robot adjusts to the particular person. I think that is much more of importance that we have this adaptability, this compliance that allows the robotic device, to cope with loads of differences in a natural way.
Yeah.
We have been now working on these inflatable structures, and as you said, very much like a balloon, if you want. Maybe I should say the main difference there is we are using mainly fabric to create these structures. So this is an inextensible material. Okay. So we can pressurize it. And the more you pressurize these structures, the more they stiffen up. And so accuracy also increases. Yeah. So we have here a system that can change its stiffness. So we are, if you want, even more powerful than the standard robot arm, because we can carry out to some extent things with a fairly high accuracy, but on the other hand, we can change the stiffness and then adapt where it's required, for example, in case of a collision, or if we need to maybe pick up a very delicate fruit in an Ocado scenario, then we can adjust the stiffness so that we can apply enough forces to lift up the object, but at the same time, make sure it's not damaged.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I find, one of the things I find so amazing about the human hand and the way we pick things up is that ability to sort of, without thinking about it, to be able to pick up a brick or a peach and to know exactly how much pressure to apply and how to grasp that in a way that's going to, be appropriate to the object.
Yep. And that's where I argue the approach where we use air as an actuation means comes in very naturally to solve that problem. Because admittedly, position control is maybe not at that level as we have seen it in the standard robots. But on the other hand, pressure control can be very nicely carried out. And so by just changing the pressure that we apply, we can very well control the forces that are applied then to the objects that are being picked up.
Mm-hmm. So how much do these soft robots look like a human hand, or can you talk a bit about what they look like?
Yep. So we have actually created a range of different systems, and they don't all look like humans. Some of them look very different. But if I think about the soft robotic hands that we have created to be used as prosthetic devices, they are actually absolutely modeled after the human hand. So we have in particular done some research on prosthetics for children. Many advantages here. In particular, they are safe. They're very cheap, so you can easily redo them if they get broken or if the child is actually growing. So you need to adjust the scale of the device regularly. And so they're actually molded after the human hand. And so we have their soft robotic hands that are actually, look one-to-one like a human hand. But so that is just one example. Many of our robots look simpler. So you could imagine cylindrical structures. So most of it is very cylindrical because air wants to expand in all directions. So the preferred structure is the cylindrical one. And so looking at the fabric-based robots, we have created straight line cylindrical structures that can be either controlled by tendons to move in different directions, or have additional pouches integrated that allow us to move the structure in different directions.
Cool.
So what really excites me about these inflatable structures is two aspects there. So first of all, we can change stiffness. I spoke about these inflatable structures. So they are pressurized. So the air is pushing in one direction, and then we use tendons to move them in different directions. And that is effectively an antagonistic behavior, inherently antagonistic. So very similar to the arms of an octopus, where we have muscles that move against each other. And that is deliberate, so that the structure, the arm, can not only move but also change its stiffness. We do that also naturally with our arms. We have muscles, the biceps and the triceps, operating against each other, and that allows us to move the arm but also to stiffen it if we want to. And that is very similar what we have achieved in those inflatable structures. And another very interesting thing is, and we did this already around 12 years ago, that there's a growing capability. So we have created now a structure that can be compacted to a very small volume. And then by pressurizing it, we can actually make it grow. And so it grows 100 times its length. And that can be used then to actually move into a remote area for a remote inspection task, for example, keyhole surgery. And that's what we are picking up now again in a project with colleagues. So it's a 10 million euro ERC synergy grant called Endotheranostics, where we are collaborating with Sébastien Ursulin from King's College London, Bruno Siciliano from Naples, and Alberto Arezzo from Turin. And effectively, here we want to create a soft growing robot that can move inside the colon for the next level of colonoscopy.
Wow. Okay. So theranostics, that word combines therapeutics and diagnostics, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And endo is because we want to do it inside the colon. So endotheranostics. Exactly. Yes. Theranostics is the therapy and the diagnostics in one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. I can't help but think that as you're talking about this, how the robots that you're designing, they sound so much more natural and organic and kind of biological than the robots we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that is really an interesting aspect that, they look very naturally. They move in a very natural way. They have this built-in compliance, and as you observed, that makes them really much more, biologically looking, if you want. And we don't have that from the standard traditional rigid component robots. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So, talking a bit more about some of the applications of these robots, we've touched a little bit on the kind of the medical and rehabilitation side of things. You're working on soft robotics for robot-assisted surgery. Do you want to talk about some of the projects in that area?
Yep. So, healthcare is definitely a very important area for me, and I've been working in the area of minimally invasive surgery for quite some time. And really the flagship project I was involved with, which I was coordinating, was an EU-funded research project called StiffFlop, and that ran from 2012 to 2015. And what was really novel there was for us to move radically away from the standard rigid component robots, which are used also in minimally invasive surgery. For example, robots like the Da Vinci robot by Intuitive Surgical, and there's also other two examples, Hugo by Medtronic, and CMR, Cambridge Medical Robotics. They're also developing tools like this, and they're all based on rigid components, and they have their advantages, of course. But the idea was to move away radically from that, and we developed soft robotic devices made from silicone rubber, but also from inflatable materials, and we could show that they can be used in that context of keyhole surgery. As part of this project, we had a human cadaver study, and with that we could prove that our system could move inside the human body in a more natural way, was much more dexterous, could move around healthy organs, for example, and reach further inside the patient's abdominal cavity. And another very important aspect was that the system was safe. So it's naturally safe, inherently safe, and that we found very promising as well for this application area.
Yeah, it seems very kind of intuitive to me that soft robots are well suited for that kind of task.
Yeah. Another project I'm involved in is EU project Palpable. Within this project, we collaborate with European research organizations and companies, and we are trying to develop soft robotic diagnostic probes that can be used actually during keyhole surgery inside the patient.
Okay.
At Queen Mary, my team and I, we are developing miniature tactile sensors that can be integrated with those probes and then be used to palpate soft tissue organs such as the liver, the stomach, the colon, inside the patient. So measuring the tactile information whilst palpating, we aim to provide the surgeon with vital information about the location and extent of cancer within the organ.
That's amazing. So you're also applying soft robotics to the manufacturing industry. Can you tell us a little bit about this work?
So my work on inflatable structures, soft robotics extends into that field. And we developed, as part of another EU project, 4x3, a new concept. And it's actually a very simple approach. And it involves, again, inflatable structures. But instead of now creating a complete robot from let's say a fabric or soft materials, here our thought was to effectively extend from the existing traditional robot arm. And here you have to imagine a robot arm made up of joints, and that each joint is then connected by a rigid link. And so we have multiple links connected by joints, and we have these structures that are probably known to the listeners, very similar in their structure like a human arm.
Yeah.
So here our thinking was now to just replace the links with an inflatable link. So the structures I spoke about beforehand, but without the tendons in there. So just a sleeve, if you want, that can be inflated, and then put into the robotic structure, into the robot arm, replacing the standard rigid link made from metal or plastic. And so now we have a structure that can effectively do more or less the same thing like the original robot arm. And that is the case when we have the link inflated. So we can inflate it. It's very high stiffness, so it behaves like a standard robot arm. However, if we now reduce the air pressure, we can actually reduce the stiffness. And that is very useful, especially if you want to now create robots that can collaborate with humans in close vicinity. So if a collision occurs, we can now release the pressure from those links and make them very soft and compliant. And in this way, we improve the safety of these devices. So that was one of our contributions to the manufacturing environment.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. How quickly do they inflate and deflate?
So that happens very, very quickly. What we have also shown is that you can actually sense the pressure. And so you can sense pressure variation. So when there is a collision, so if there is a contact with the environment, then that causes a spike in the pressure inside the link, and we can react very quickly to it, open a valve to reduce the pressure inside.
That's really cool.
I should also add that even in its completely stiff state, so when highly pressurized, it is never as stiff as the standard robot arm. So even then we have already a safer system, but it becomes even more safe if we then also actively reduce the pressure. Coming back to what we discussed earlier, the overall accuracy that can be achieved with such a system is probably slightly lower than what we can do with a standard traditional arm made from rigid components. But I see it as something one has to keep in mind, of course. But there have been developments in the past effectively doing the opposite of what I'm suggesting. So instead of what I'm suggesting to look at the links, other researchers have actually made the joints more compliant.
Right.
And there we have similar problems. Accuracy is reduced. But the disadvantages of the other approach is that these joints are very heavy with this series elastic actuator built in, and they cannot easily change the stiffness as we can do with our pressurized links.
Yeah, I guess, there's always going to be trade-offs, right? And sometimes extremely high precision is going to be what you need, and sometimes adaptability and safety and softness are going to be more important. So, that's a really interesting project. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
Kaspar, it's been fascinating chatting to you today.
Yeah, same here.
I've been talking to Kaspar Althoefer from Queen Mary University of London. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy Robot Talk, please share the podcast, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast, so thanks in advance. And if you've got a question you'd like me to ask one of my future guests, you can contact me on social media at Robot Talk Pod, on Patreon at patreon.com/Claire Asher, or at robottalk.org. I regularly announce upcoming guests on all those platforms, and I'd love to include your questions in my next interview. I thought you might like to hear a sneak peek of this month's bonus episode. Do you think you could ever be friends with a robot?
I think so. I mean, it depends on what you want to have for your friendship, right?
Yeah.
I would not think it becomes like this very deep conversation friendship, but companion robots are getting better and better, and sometimes they are even very cute. So it sounds to me like this could also someone fun to hang out with, and maybe this robot can explain me stuff that I wouldn't know otherwise. So, yeah,
why not?
I think it's really easy to anthropomorphize when it comes to things like this, and we do that anyway. My wife names all of our cars, for example, that kind of thing, because we like to think of things that aren't living things as living things. And I think with a robot, it's probably extra easy. I think the idea of having a good kind of human-robot interaction model in place is probably going to be the key to that. There is a video game character that is a robot that everybody fell in love with within a minute of meeting the character because of the animation and because of the scripting. And I definitely think that's something that we'd be able to do in time.
If you'd like to hear more from this bonus episode, sign up as a supporter on Patreon by going to patreon.com/Claire Asher. And you'll get access to the full catalogue of bonus content. Next week, I'll be talking to Josie Gertz from the Manufacturing Technology Centre about reducing waste with robotics. Until then, I've been Claire Asher, and this has been Robot Talk. Robot Talk is brought to you by the Hamlin Centre, Imperial College London.